Thank you. Mr. Beaudreau, nice to see you. On the orphan well program, to follow up a little bit on what Senator King asked about, I know the initial grants have been sent out, but the formula funding has not been yet received. My Louisiana Department of Natural Resources is saying kind of the delay in that being received could decrease the economy of scale of doing a big contract at once as opposed to multiple small contracts. When will that Formula One grant funding actually go out for the orphan well program?
So, among other things, extremely focused on getting that funding out and getting the formulas out. So that will happen early next year.
First quarter?
Hopefully first quarter, yes. We're quite focused.
I hope to have a Merry Christmas, but I'm looking at the probability. What is the probability it'll be out first quarter?
I think it's a good probability it'll be out first quarter.
Still kind of wiggle words. I don't mean to be offensive, but that's just...
And again, not to make excuses, sir, like part of what we are doing is, especially on this program, we're standing up a major program from scratch. And I do take the responsibilities that Ranking Member Barrasso described of making sure there's not leakage from the system or waste or fraud and that we have the controls in place. And so over the past year, we have been focused on standing up a brand new program, but ensuring that the right controls are in place around it.
Sounds good. I thank you for the elaboration. Let me switch a little bit to a different coastline, then I'll come back to mine. Alaska. The administration recently spoke about, had published a decision memo, which included a royalty rate surcharge of 2.5% to account for the social cost of upstream greenhouse gas emissions from the production in the Cook Inlet. I'm told this decision memo said, quote, as lessees internalize the cost associated with carbon emissions, OCS activity and corresponding production could move towards a lower but more socially optimal level. On the left and the right, we just agreed that high energy costs are contributing to inflation. Clearly, domestic production can address that. But here the internal memo is speaking about moving to a lower level of production. Now, I sent a letter to Secretary Holland in September, still have not received a reply. I wished I had received it last night, but I have not. What does the administration consider to be a socially optimal level of production, and where is that defined in the law?
So I don't think you know, the interpretation of that statement is that the administration has in mind a socially optimal level of production, but rather presentation on the social cost is an important piece of information for the public to understand the full costs of fossil fuel development. And
let me stop you. That begs the question then, I have limited time, I'm sorry. It begs the question, does the administration or the department believe that it is more socially optimal for Venezuela or OPEC nations to create more oil, to produce more oil for U.S. consumption? Because that's really the trade-off here. So do you have a socially optimal analysis of Venezuela or other OPEC nations versus domestic production?
So I'm not familiar with any statements from the administration along those lines, Senator.
Can you share a copy with the committee of the decision memo where the department describes the rationale for the royalty increase? I'm told this is foilable, but I'd rather not foilable it. I'd rather receive it.
I'm happy to follow up on that request.
Now, because the Deepwater Gulf leases already pay 18.75% royalty, will the department be including the social cost of greenhouse gas emissions in the bid requirements, rentals, or other fees for Gulf operators? And if so, when, where?
So under, again, through implementation of the IRA, we have not included a social cost of carbon factor in any of those rental, royalty, or fees.
And do not anticipate doing so?
No, we use the social cost of carbon as a tool, again, as a disclosure tool, but we have not used,
okay, I got you.
used it in connection with.
And lastly, just to put a nail in this coffin, previously the department had said that there was a no lease option. We've talked about how the IRA requires lease sales in order to get wind, but at times the administration says one thing and frankly does another. So are you saying that indeed there will be a lease sale, that the no lease option will not be exercised?
So again, we're implementing the IRA mandates in addition to releasing the leases for 257, 2 lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico, and we are implementing that.
So there will not be a no lease sale option exercise, correct?
We are implementing the law which requires those lease sales, and we are in the process of finalizing the next 5-year plan. And part of the consideration is the requirements of the law that there essentially be Gulf of Mexico lease sales in order to also implement our offshore wind programs.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cortez Masto.